Presenting Benny Goodman and his music.
There we are then. This microphone around a little bit. All right. Welcome everybody. I'll give it a moment for everybody to get online as usual. I see my generous pour tonight. Hey Mona. Martin, Geraldine, and Gladys. Hey, Larry, all you assorted Mysterians, and good evening, Octavio. Yeah, I just noticed it was raining pretty good. I'm going to open the window. Or the curtains, anyway.
Gentlemen, the man with the torrid clarinet and the even more torrid band who purveys assorted rhythms, all danceable, in the urban room of the Congress Hotel in Chicago. And first of all, one of Irving Berlin's greatest hits, Blue Skies.
Never mind, there's still Christmas stuff on the window. Hey, Jim, hey, Susan, hey, Mary, Karen, Timothy. Hey, Ellen. Evening, Karen. Hey, everybody. I heard some thunder out there. Hey, Bridget and Mary Jo. Evelyn. Cindy. Hey, Kelly. Yeah, Laura. Hey, Bridget. Magnifico, Susan. Hey, Ed and Warren. Evening, Marie. Hey, Nancy. Hey, Gina. Gina, already... I hope you like it. You already donated. But, hey, Bella, you are barely early. Yeah, we got some nice weather going on out there. I really wanted it to be colder than it is right now in February. So I like my really cold days where I can put on a nice sweater, etc. It is, in fact, nearly Punchki Day. This is a holiday I have absolutely no guilt about appropriating. I mean, you make a jelly donut holiday, people are going to appropriate that. Oh, thanks, Gina. Hey, June. Success. Hey, Hero in Indiana. Hey, Lemond. Let's grab something. Lily. Well, I just got a glimpse of Lily over there. That's what all I got to do is leave out my old dinner plate. Hey, Debbie, a lot of Mysterians here, I see. Hey, Leah. Hey, Elaine. Hi, all. Yeah, Karen. I didn't get much of a lightning show here. Just a reminder that I gotta take down window clings. Hey, Scott.
Helen Ward singing With All My Heart.
Hey, everybody. What is happening? Hey, Lemons. Hey, Paula. Sarah, the B's and E's, the be all and end all. I once read something that's what the bee's knees means. It's actually the B's and E's. That does not sound real to me, but okay. One of those folk etymologies. Hey, Emily. Hey, y'all. I just realized some time ago, like a year ago, I got a legal archives case that I didn't document. I said, nah, this is probably the wrong Emily Fisher. No, it wasn't. And she used Hawk's old lawyer. And I didn't document it well enough. Foolish of me. Hey, Bella. Hey, Barbara. I say I love you. And Marita, we are always the cat's pajamas around here. The cat's whiskers, the cat's meow, the cat's meat, pajamas. All of the above. It's fun reading stuff from the early 20s when cat's pajamas was still kind of a new term and people were just desperate to work it into a sentence. Whether they actually knew how to do so or not. Evening, Lorena. Welcome along, everybody. You might notice there's a new tour listed for 2 weeks from today. Next week, it is only natural on St. Valentine's Day week to do Gangsters of Chicago. And the next week, I realized, I got all these stories about forgotten gangsters, including the one who is going to be on Patreon all next week. And continuing through several others, because that guy had some adventures. Hey, Nancy. Evening, Katie. Glad to have you, Maureen.
Benny Goodman goes way back and
hey, Joanne.
A rhythm out of Walk, Jenny Walk. Benny Goodman and his orchestra.
The other day, I did a lot of Patreon stuff this morning. A lot of stuff for the Patreon. Should really be plugging. Oh, hey, look who's here. Hey, Miles. You here to help me with, cleaning the lens off? And all the grocery shopping, and a whole bunch of Johann Hawk book work. I don't know why in the world Emily Fisher would have hired Hawk's lawyer. It's not like he did a good job or anything. Here's the guy himself. Yeah, you got your pajamas on, Miles? You're always wearing your pajamas because you are the cat's pajamas. Girl, yeah, Ronnie has been home for some time. And a quick shout out to Aiden, who made the Dean's List with a 4.0. Hey, Kitty. Miles, you gonna hop up here? Should I make room for you here? Is that what you're wanting? Here comes the jump. There he goes. Alright, now I'll try to make space for you, okay? Have a seat. Yeah, just have a seat, Miles. There you go. You know you're getting some attention whenever I'm got the computer set up like this, huh? Hey, Dana. Hey, Katie. Hold on the microphone, you hear this guy purring.
And they all loved it. They all loved those bastards when they played by Benny Goodman. And now another one just in the same vein. Rosetta.
Maybe you can. Miles, I'm sure, sends his greetings back to Rufus. Hey, everybody. Look at this guy. What a guy. Wow. Cat named Vladimir, that's an interesting choice in this day and age. Probably throughout the cat's lifespan. Hey, Cassidy. Karen, yes we are. We are coming to the 4th anniversary of our shenanigans next month. I can't remember what the exact day. Guess who is getting adopted? You in 1985? Hey, Judy. Hey, Kendra. Zaluka. What? Miles is very eager to hang out tonight. He's got his butt about halfway off at the edge. Hey, Kim. Hey, Kathleen. Hey, Jan. Hey, congrats to Christy, congrats to Luca, congrats all around. I still remember breakdancing at the airport when you came in, Cassidy, back in '85.
Congress Hotel in downtown Chicago. And now Benny Goodman's arrangement of the Bugle Call Rag.
We're trying to breakdance. 5-year-old version breakdancing. And Miles is still over here. We're gonna let, normally this is about the time when we stop the Benny, but I'm gonna get bogged down by the Miles here. Okay, Benny, it is time to stop. Alright, so Bugle Call Rag, once again, everybody. So, welcome along, everybody. I'm Adam for Mysterious Chicago Tours. With me, as always, is Miles the Magnificent, Miles the Mysterious, the cat's pajamas himself, made flesh. All right, Adam for Mysterious Chicago, been a tour guide and historian here in Chicago for going on 20 years now. Got about a dozen Chicago history books out, including Mysterious Chicago, the book, Murder Maps USA, and Graceland Cemetery, Chicago's Stories, Symbols, and Secrets. I have spent most of the day working on a book about Johann Hawk, one of our other old-timey serial killers with a mustache. There certainly are a lot of those out there. I'm going to lower this thing down so it's blaring in the background of my window here. So, today though we are going to be talking about some architecture. Not quite as much of the mysteries and crime and murder and mayhem and graves and worms and epitaphs as we normally have here. We're just going to be talking about really awesome architecture. When I think architecture, first thing that usually comes to mind, honestly, is Art Deco. That's the style that I associate with city living. Now, some of this just comes from the fact that in the 1920s, cities like Chicago were so scared about how tall buildings were getting that they thought they were going to block out the sun. So a lot of cities, like this is Chicago's ordinance, dictated that they had to get narrower as they got taller. This ended up influencing the very style of the buildings. That's also made them look bigger as they get taller. It creates kind of an optical illusion. So, brief Architecture 101. This is one of my favorite Manhattan buildings. This is the New York City Yacht Club, a building I'll probably never get inside of. But this is an architectural style known as Beaux-Arts, the architecture of the late 19th and early 20th century. Very ornate, lots and lots of columns, lots of stuff like these melting-looking bay windows. We have also got, beyond that, we started to streamline things a little bit with the Chicago School of Architecture that you can see here at the Marquette Building. And then the Prairie School style, which emphasized the horizontal quite a lot, with Frank Lloyd Wright's building here, such as the Roby House. But then, in New York, we've got this one called the Equitable Building from the 1910s, more or less than the Chicago School, but getting a lot taller. Taller and taller and taller, and so tall that they started putting in all of these zoning requirements. They were afraid that was going to block the sun from Trinity Church. It would block the sun from Wall Street. Probably would have been good for the gravestones at Trinity Church if it had. The decades after that were not kind to the gravestones. This ended up being reflected in the architecture, like you can see it here at the Chrysler Building and the Empire State Building in New York, two of the finer examples of Art Deco anywhere. The Chrysler Building, those circular things are supposed to be tires, like a stack of tires up on the top. I always thought that was cool. And of course, I always call it like the Superman style. Like, this is a version of the Daily Planet where Clark Kent works as his day job. Now, it is sometimes said that this is a basis for later architectural buildings, or was based on actual ones. This is how it first appeared. It didn't appear in the comics till the 1940s, by which time the architectural style was kind of going out. Sometimes said to be based on the Paramount Building in New York, where a little show called The Music Man premiered in the Paramount Theater, currently the home of the Hard Rock Cafe. Here in Chicago, you can see the style reflected in things like this rendering in Chicagoan Magazine. This is a really cool magazine from the 1920s and 30s. My parents just sent me a big coffee table book of articles from it with all of these fantastic designs showing the Art Deco style with a lot of clean lines and a lot of streamlined verticality, and especially a lot of really tall people. Earlier kinds of architecture had incorporated statues and things. In Art Deco style, they tend to be very tall, very streamlined, emphasizing the verticality. Simple geometric art, very clean lines. You can see some of it in the style here of the font, which I just thought this was very amusing. This is a 1920s advertisement that was in the Chicagoans for Crush Dry. It was a substitute for alcohol. It was orange soda, only they made it kind of yucky, so it would almost be like you're drinking a cocktail. I would kind of like a Crush Dry. I imagine it's very much like a San Pellegrino, really. But this brings us to one of the first and one of my favorite examples of Art Deco in Chicago. We just start this one with one of the greats, the Board of Trade Building at the foot of LaSalle Street at Jackson. All lit up like it's Gotham City right here. Not so much Metropolis as Gotham here. I absolutely love this one by Holabird and Root, who are really the rock stars of Art Deco. Mr. Holabird had been half of Holabird and Roche that did a lot of the Chicago School architects. Mr. Holabird, his son was in Holabird and Root. Mr. Root, John Root Jr., was the son of John Root, who was partnered in Burnham and Root. Long dynasties that went on to newer and greater styles. And here's how this very building appeared on the cover of the Chicagoan, right around the time that it opened in 1930. Look at this. You'd never know there was a depression going on, would you? 1930 is a very odd year to be opening up a Board of Trade, really. Here's how it looks during the day. Absolutely adore it at night, though. One of the things that Art Deco also aligned with the time period when big dramatic spotlights started to be a possible thing, so having dramatic lighting schemes on these buildings added to the style. Now, up at the top is this statue. This is a statue by John Story of Ceres, the Roman goddess of grains and agriculture. Now, it is often noted that the statue does not have a face. Look up right there. The statue does not have a face, and it is sometimes said that John Story said, the sculptor said, well, nobody's ever going to build a building this tall again, so who's even going to see? And in this interview in the Tribune, pictured here on the left, he did say stuff kind of to that effect. He did say, well, it's going to be so high up that very few people would really be able to see the face anyway. And that much remains true, but he wasn't a fool. He knew that buildings were going to be climbing taller and taller and taller. And in fact, there were already taller buildings going up in New York at the time, though this would remain Chicago's tallest building until the 1950s. You can also see a bit of the style of an Art Deco statue in the Oscar. Then down below, we've got these relief statues, a little more, if they had legs, they'd be very tall. These are relief sculptures by Alvin Meyer, who will come up again over the course of this. But once again, these tall, elongated people that you also see like on this elevator. I could never figure out where I took this elevator picture. Or this advertisement from Marshall Field that was in the Chicagoan. Same kind of very tall people. Pretty pictures of ladies and lizards. You also see that in another Art Deco building way up on the north side here, up on Devon Avenue, right as it curves off from Sheridan. This is by Fisher McCarthy from 1930, the same year. This was Mundelein Women's College at the time. It is now part of Loyola University with these two statues known as Uriel and Josephine, who also, it's kind of just suggested. You can see kind of where the dresses stop, but they blend into the columns down below, which kind of gives it a look as though these are very, very tall people. This also matches the distinct Art Deco stylings on the windows here. I really think are terrific looking windows. Style like a poster for the Great Gatsby movie from a few years back. Now, people think people were shorter back in those days, but obviously they were not. People were much taller then based on the statues. Another one, just about facing this one down directly. If you're, that's really kind of up at the top of Lakeshore Drive. Then down at the other end, right as you start bending around into the loop of Lakeshore Drive, you come to the Palmolive building back behind the Drake Hotel, rising up into the sky here with its own dramatic lighting scheme, and the Lindbergh Beacon, hovering there over by the Hancock building. I thought for the longest time that this was a part of the Drake Hotel. But no, this is the Palmolive building. You can see it gets narrower as it gets taller. It's got its streamlined verticality, its simple geometric art, and this dramatic lighting scheme that used to apparently be even more dramatic. This is a photograph by George Henry High, whose family has a plot at Graceland Cemetery, but how it looked very early on. Just look how much it stands out here. But also, notice that incredibly bright light up on the top of it. That was called the Lindbergh Beacon to celebrate Lindbergh's solo flight across the Atlantic. It was said that you could fly an airplane like way out into the lake, maybe even as far as Michigan, and read a book by the light of the Lindbergh Beacon. One guy did try to fly out like 15 miles or as far up as Wisconsin or something. It was said that you could actually see it from that high. It's another really cool, dramatic, foggy-looking version of it, right next to the water tower, kind of contrasting more of a Beaux-Arts, castellated style with a very modern. Think how much more modern it must have looked at the time, too. Now, for a time in the 1960s, this became the Playboy Building. The Beacon was still active at the time, and now it's active again. I still see it glowing occasionally. They've just got a deal going now where it only goes over the lake, not into, people's windows. Now that there are other tall buildings around it, people don't really appreciate having the light going right on into them like that. There's also a similar beacon at another Art Deco building in Chicago from the same, just about the same year, the LaSalle Wacker building. Another Holabird and root joint, as was the Palmolive. Right next to the 111 building. Standing up there kind of looking like a throne. That throne shape is fairly common in these things. But beacons were a new idea. Everybody thought that was really cool at the time. Next we'll take a look at how this looks at night. On my ghost tours, one of my drivers used to call this building the Devil's Armchair, because it looked kind of like a chair you could sit in if you didn't mind getting a flag up your butt. And who among us does? Cool Instagram shot of it here. But here it is with its beacon shining. It had a beacon on top of this one when it opened in 1930 called the Sun Flash Beacon. Patent pending. Now, this was one that used an awful lot less power than the Lindbergh Beacon, which you can see back behind in this picture, back in the background. But this one was made up of a whole bunch of little mirrors. So it was shining bright. There was some kind of light source in there, but also it was reflected around that made it a whole lot more powerful. There was even a story about a pilot taking off from Toledo seeing some light off in the distance and wondering what that was and deciding to fly all the way till he found out. Turned out to be the Sunflash beacon up atop the LaSalle Wacker building. Man-made star guides flyers. See, this is what we were doing with technology in the 1930s. We were making our own stars. Now, I know that at the boat tour company, they taught us to say that the Art Deco emphasizes the verticality to symbolize the soaring optimism of the 1920s. But the thing is, they were still building Art Deco into the 1930s. And also, we think of it more of as an era of optimism looking back than people did at the time. It was the Jazz Age. People thought it was a dark age of cynicism. Thrills, thrills, thrills. And, you know, the come down from World War I. Problem with this? Bats and birds flew to their death in the beacon pretty regularly. Every morning since the beacon has been in operation on the setbacks of the 40th and 41st floors, an average of 3 dead birds. That's, you know, I've heard of worse than that. It was also, of course, the building where Frank the Enforcer Nitti, a Capone henchman who took over after he went to jail, was shot back in 1932. And it looked as though he had been shot fatally, though in fact he survived. Partly because when gangsters were about to go on a raid, they always went on an empty stomach. They said it was safer. Now, another guy who you could about say is a gangster as well ended up operating in the building in the 1950s, Mr. Ray Kroc, who was operating Prince Castle Sales out of this place. He was a traveling salesman selling multi-mixers, mixing machines that could make 8 milkshakes at once in case anybody needed that many milkshakes that quickly. Then he, of course, famously went out to see the McDonald Brothers operation to see why in the world anybody would need 8 multi-mixers going at once. Ended up buying them out. He was actually in his office in here when he called the McDonald's and asked him, "How much do you want for me to buy you out?" They quoted him something like $2.5 million plus 1% of sales. He dropped the phone and said, "Do you hear that? That's the sound of me jumping out of the LaSalle Wacker building." Here he is here's one of the multi-mixers. They do have this cool mid-century design, kind of an outgrowth of the Art Deco style. And here it is all lit up in purple, just like the Grimace. All right, just across the river from that is the Merchandise Mart. Now we get into a slightly different architectural firm. This would be Graham Anderson, Probst & White in 1930. This was built as the wholesale showroom for Marshall Field. Sometimes we describe it as a warehouse. Not exactly what it was. Marshall Field made most of their money out of their wholesale department. Other stores selling Marshall Field goods elsewhere. So salesmen would come in here and check out the stuff, see what they wanted to sell in their store. It didn't last very long, though. The Field Company lost it early on. Since then, it's been several different things, including now the home of Art on the Mart. The very cool thing here, the projected lights are specially made not to shine into the windows, which takes a little more doing than the Lindbergh Beacon that just has to make sure it doesn't go all the way around. That I suppose makes it a little harder to do my plan of getting an Atari rigged up and playing Yar's Revenge on this thing. But building so large it had its own zip code for years. Now, one of my favorite little gems of Art Deco in Chicago, we don't normally think of Chicago as an Art Deco city the same way we do New York, but I think if more people could see the Trustee System Services building, which is off there in the distance, maybe it would be better known. This is kind of one of our lesser-known buildings, partly because you can't really see it from the street all that well. Most of the place you can see here, you just see the train. Best way to see a good view of the Trustee System Services building is to go to the parking garage next door and take the elevator up to the roof. Then you can get yourself a nice view of the Trustee System Services building, which almost looks like it would have its own Sunflash beacon up there on the top. Trustee, this is by Thielbar and Reed from 1930. There is a story going around that one of the floors was a speakeasy in the 1920s and 30s. It would have been fairly late in the field. Really, I get the impression it was just a lunchroom. People just like to say there was a speakeasy in their buildings these days. Trustee System Services was a very kind of uptight company, really. Yeah, this is 201 North Wells, the Skyline Restaurant. by all accounts, it was really just a restaurant, but way up high. If you look up closer here, you can see this caduceus. This is the staff with two snakes going around it, which is a symbol of commerce. It's often used for medicine. Officially, it's supposed to be one snake for medicine, two snakes for commerce, though we change that around a lot. And down on the front, the Trustee System Services was a credit system. They've got all these reliefs about how thrift makes you wealthy, credit makes the world go round, spending too much money will make you go poor, and it means you're a bad person, etc. Credit moves the modern business world. And all these things on the inside, life punishes the thriftless. See this poor thriftless guy. Couldn't even afford to buy a razor. Or a haircut that doesn't involve putting a pudding bowl over your head. But also we check out this fantastic grill work by Ed Gibson. And when the train goes by, back in behind it, it almost looks like it's animated, doesn't it? You get it at just the right light there. Trustee System Services, for all of their big talk about life punishing the thriftless, went out of business shortly after this building opened. Zip out just slightly here. 1931, I just love this place. Bloom High School, out in Chicago Heights. One of the finest examples of Art Deco architecture going, I think. Just absolutely magnificent. Streamlined verticality even on such a horizontal building. Also very cool on the inside, they've got these paintings from the WPA in the 1930s. Paintings of industrious people. They've kept these even though they do not look very much like the student body today. But sometimes little bits of artwork survive, and in that Art Deco style. This is a power station that they couldn't tear down when Block 37 went in, and I'm very glad they didn't tear this one down, even though it's really just kind of taking up space. I'd love it if they found some adaptive reuse for this, but I love that it's still there because of this fresco. The Spirit of Electricity by Sylvia Shaw Judson. Look at that. I love that giant in a loincloth holding up bolts of electricity. Sylvia Shaw Judson, of course, is probably best known for the statue Bird Girl on the cover of Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. She's now buried at Graceland Cemetery. And it also kind of reminds me, you see some of these same lightning bolt designs in the General Electric building in New York, one of my favorites. This one, you've even got like a mummy wrapped up in lightning bolts. That's a monster movie waiting to happen. Don't say I didn't warn you, New York. Let's move on just a little to the Daily News building. Kind of like an Art Deco version of the Sphinx, I've heard it referred to as. Not quite a throne, more of a Sphinx, or more of a booster seat, I guess. One of those backjack chairs that you see at yoga studios. Moving a little bit closer here, you see these designs that also kind of call back to ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt was very popular in the Art Deco era after the finding of King Tut's tomb. But there are all of these frescoes and designs here by Alvin Meyer, who also did those statues on the outside of the Board of Trade building. This is another Halliburton Root joint. They seem to have liked Alvin Meyer over at Halliburton Root. This one went up the year before, or approximately the same time, really. It's kind of tricky to figure out exactly when a building was built, because it's designed one year, construction starts another year, it finishes another year. So every source is going to have a different exact number there. Just check out the plaza a little bit here. Having a plaza in front of the building was a very new idea. And they had Alvin Meyer do a whole setup showing frescoes, kind of showing the history of printing. Or a lot of the giants of printing are shown here. Like there's Mr. Medill of the Tribune, a rival. There's also this Art Deco version of a griffin. Welcome everybody over from Chicago for Chicagoans. Now, notably absent, there's Lawson, who was at the Chicago Daily News. There's Horace Greeley of the New York Tribune. Notably absent, Wilbur F. Story of the Chicago Times. Also notably absent is Hearst, whose influence on papers, you can say what you will about him, his influence on papers was tremendous. And a lot of his bad reputation today comes more from rival smear than anything else. Here's a nice hard contrast black and white edition of it. Now, to the inside of it, it's all offices and things in there now. The Daily News hasn't been in business in a very long time, but you still see things like the directory with this very Art Deco grill over it. I don't know if this is original. I'm kind of thinking it must not be, because why would you have a grill like that over your directory? Normally you just want the directory where people can read it. Maybe they were using very valuable lettering and had to lock it up at night. I've heard stranger things. Now, right across the river from the Daily News building is the Civic Opera building. I got to go on a really cool tour of the inside of this one right before the pandemic hit. We got to see all the props from the opera, one of which was a picture of Kool-Aid, which I believe is from the German opera, Der Kool-Aid-Meister. Oh, yeah. Kool-Aid. Go around to the front of it, though. This is kind of like a Beaux-Arts building plastered over an Art Deco frame. I've sometimes described it. The architecture itself kind of splits the difference. Like, this is a little bit Beaux-Arts right here. But then when you see, a little closer up, you see these columns. They're very much Art Deco versions of Corinthian columns. You all know your columns, right? There's your Doric column, your Ionic column, and the Corinthian column, which is looked like a giant crazy pineapple. That's how a teacher... I have this one school group that used to come every year. The kids always knew all the kinds of columns. I thought that was neat. The teacher described Corinthian as the crazy pineapple-looking one. So that would be your normal Corinthian column. And you can contrast that here next to the ones at the Civic Opera building, which streamline it quite a deal, with a nice clean lines, but still kind of a crazy pineapple vibe. Also, the Civic Opera's sign game is the best in town. Their message board sign, like, "We're not on mute, visit us online," or one of them was, "Bringing sexy back, Carmen at the Lyric Opera." All right. Another one with more streamlined columns is the old Chicago Daily News building, a Halliburton root joint from 1929. Now here, you don't know what you would call these kinds of columns. Are they Doric? Are they Ionic? Are they Corinthian? They're certainly not Corinthian. There's a fuller version of it. And we'll move in just a bit. So you can see there's no capital. A column is supposed to consist of a base, a shaft, and a capital. Do you see a capital on here? Progress. Also, maybe the Depression. Now, this opened in 1929, probably before the economy crashed, I believe. No, wait, this one's 1927, so it would have been in good shape. This was the Sun-Times building until 1958. Many of you know the Sun-Times moved across the river to an international school building that was generally regarded as hideous. People kind of thought it was cool when it first opened. Now they're across the street in the old Holiday Inn building, which tended to win a lot of contests for the worst building in town until they painted it kind of gunmetal blue. I think they improved it a lot with the paint job, personally. We're going to move down LaSalle Street a little bit to 1 LaSalle. Another fantastic Art Deco style on a nice foggy night. Built over the site of another notable building, the Tacoma building, where H.H. Holmes' creditors met one day to confront him a couple of times. But now it is 1 North LaSalle, which on the inside has these really awesome elevators with tall people stretching to show that their deodorant works. Confident, dry and secure. Here's the way it looked when they first designed it. It looked kind of like a cash register, or kind of like Helmut Jahn's Falling Water building. And down the road a little ways is one of the more pure examples of Art Deco, the Field Building by Graham Anderson, Probst, and White from 1930. Shorter than the Board of Trade building, only by a little bit. Well, you can see the very clean lines here, very straight up and down lines. Built over the site of William LeBaron and Jenny's home insurance building, which is generally said to have been the first modern skyscraper. On the inside of it is this stairway up to the Attic Club. A lot of these places have their own secret club for the guys who hang out in there. Now, when this was first built, it's currently known as the Bank of America building. Initially, it was the Field Building. It's a design of how it was going to look. It would have looked very very official, very modern at the time, but very strong. This one just strikes me as a very strong building. So you want a strong building when you have insurance offices. There was an insurance office here that I talk about a lot on the Architecture of Mysterious Chicago tour. There was a guy who was in a contest in his insurance company. Whoever could sell the most insurance won. Then it looked like he was about to win until Walter Habeneck sold himself a giant policy and pulled ahead. Doesn't this guy just look like the kind of guy who would sell himself an insurance policy to cheat in a contest? Does he look like a guy you would buy insurance from? I don't know. I'd maybe hire him as my attorney if I needed a criminal attorney. Huh. We'll move on a bit. So here we got the Hampton Inn. I don't really think Art Deco when I think Hampton Inn, but it's great when they can build these places into older buildings for adaptive reuse. This is the old Chicago Motor Club, a 1928 Holabird and Root joint. You can see a little bit of the verticality here. So we get in closer, you can see the logo. This is like a club for people who liked cars in 1928. So on the inside, they've got a 1928 style car in the Art Deco style lobby. So move in closer there. You can see this fantastic grill work. You see a lot of great grill work and a lot of the influence really of car designs. This all looks like tires if you really look at it. Not unlike the Chrysler building in New York. You see that up here too? That almost looks like an automobile grill if you kind of squint. Well, you also see that on the Ritz Garage at 55. Moving here, this was built as a parking garage. And shorter than most of the Art Deco we've been looking at today. But as we go in closer, you see a lot of these ornamental touches that look at a glance kind of like the building that we saw up on Sherwood in Rogers Park this morning on the mini tour. But if you look in a little bit closer, you see, for one thing, they're tires. And up there you even see these cars. Nice and streamlined, elongated. As I mentioned, tire designs worked into a line. Now, this was the beginning, really, of the automobile age. It was the time when people stopped having cars just as something for fun and as something that you drove to get to where the fun was or to where the work was. A lot of these things just still kind of hang around. You also see a lot of ancient Egypt influence, like here at the Laramie State Bank of Chicago, out in the Austin neighborhood at 5200 West Chicago, which is made up, you can see it's a bank because there's coins all over the place, but it's made to look like a pharaoh's tomb. Kind of a reminder that you can't take it with you, I suppose, but you can try. Here at Laramie State Bank, covered in scarabs and columns. And some nice brightly colored Art Deco touches. You can see even more of the Egyptian stuff over in Lincoln Park, just up the way from the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. At Reby Moving and Storage, which is a storage company, all set up to look, again, like an Egyptian tomb. Moving a little bit closer there. There's another building like this just after you get from the tunnel into New York. It's like the first thing my school groups see, and often will say, wow, this just looks like New York. I'm like, yeah, except for that part that looks like Egypt right there. And once again, here we can also see the caduceus with the two snakes around the staff. And then down below are a bunch of hieroglyphics that translate to something like, I will guard your furniture. And down below there, part of the National Register of Historic Places. But also you see these almost lightning bolt looking things up above this mummy's feet. I feel like you don't see a lot of mummies that are barefoot. I'd have to double check on that one though. And also we just see some randomly Art Deco things. This one could kind of use a cleanup, but this is an Art Deco funeral home over on the northwest side. Grain funeral home. You can see also the kind of the streamlined verticality there, the straight up and down lines. It is fairly near the old Orange Garden Chop Suey, a neon sign that was just recently taken down and now purchased by Billy Corgan. I thought they were taking down a whole lot of old signs last year. I thought the city should buy them up and put them up in like Couch Place Alley or something. That'd be a great photo spot, like a whole alley full of old neon signs. I pay the taxes on that, sure. Well, my share, anyway. Also, over in the West Loop, you see something a little bit unusual. An Art Deco building with more splashes of color than usual. For one thing, it's a little bit more horizontal than most Art Deco. But also, the ornamentation here is in different colors at Richter's Food Products. Very Art Deco kind of font there. Well, that's really the most notable thing about it to me is the colors. But of course, one of Chicago's greatest Art Deco creations, the Carbide and Carbon building on Michigan Avenue in a brilliant dark green with gold on top. There actually is a thing, and this is by Burnham and Burnham, the Burnham brothers, the sons of Daniel Burnham. There is a thing in one of their diaries that the builders wanted it to be like the color of an old champagne bottle, which in 1929 was fairly bold because champagne wasn't legal at the time. But it is kind of champagne-like, green and gold. It's kind of based on the look of the American Radiator building that overlooks Bryant Park in New York, but with a different color scheme. It's a little taller than that one, for one thing, and with that green and gold color scheme. And of course, when they light it up and you get up close to it, there's lots of other little touches, like the grill work here over the awning. And all over the doors. This is one of my favorite buildings. It still says CC Carbide and Carbon, even though they haven't actually operated out of that in many, many decades now. We'll also see down on the south side, we've got the First Church and the old what is this one? First Church of what? First Church of Deliverance, it's called. But you can see this one is getting a little bit more rounded, which indicates that we are getting into the next style that came around, which went from Art Deco to Art Moderne, or Streamline Moderne, it's sometimes called, which is effectively Art Deco with more curves. You can see a bit of it here in what you can still see of the Esquire Theater, which used to look like this. Art Deco, but more colors and more curves. And that began to evolve, too, into the Googie style of architecture, also known as Ray Gun Gothic in the 1950s. Architecture veered a couple of ways in the 50s. One was towards plain black rectangles, and the other was toward things like Norm's here, or Mel's Drive-In Diner. Much more sharper angles. More sharper. Kind of splitting the difference was the World's Fair of 1933. Here in Chicago.
Here we are, folks, at Chicago's world-famed Century of Progress, the spectacular fair that was started by a beam of light from the star Arcturus. No less than 22 millions of them came swarming into this colossal show to witness the brilliant handiwork of its modern, unparalleled ingenuity. They create a picture that enthralls the eye with their sweep and majesty, a gorgeous climax to this vista of blue-green lagoon, the hope of design made real. Mingling with the brisk tone of modern America, we find, too,
right
the spice and flavor of the foreign. Once it was Ferris wheel, But today it's the towering sky ride that offers the major thrill of the fair. Traveling across the lagoon, one saw far below the fairgrounds in a molten glow of brilliance. Blues and reds and greens and yellows, all fused into a blazing kaleidoscope of color.
I love that he's this excited about colors.
Here's King Kong himself
King
and two
Kong
of his
himself.
gentle playmates entertaining the midway crowds. And now we come upon a most unique structure, the Travel and Transport Building, presenting a dominant phase of industry in its most commanding aspects, a triumph of architectural design and balance. And here is transportation in its most modern, thrilling
this kind of looks like a
expression.
big grill.
The Temple of Champions, with its clean-cut lines and splashing fountains, mingling beauty with utility. In the shadow of this modern architecture, crowds come daily to see how cars are subjected to acid tests of endurance. This miniature track, with its 45-degree side banks and its saucer turns, is the proving ground of car performance.
So after this, they just kind of show the cars testing themselves for a really long time. Kind of like test track. Well, all right, everybody, that is Art Deco Chicago. So coming up next week, it's going to be St. Valentine's Week. That means it's got to be time for Famous Gangsters of Chicago. The next week, there's going to be a brand new tour on less famous gangsters of Chicago, forgotten gangsters. Gangsters that Chicago history forgot. Sometimes you just don't have a good enough nickname, you know? And seriously, when they were passing out nicknames, Hoops-a-Daisy Connors had to be in the bathroom, right? So, that is all coming up. Of course, tomorrow night, we've also got Whiskey and a Cookie. So lots of great stuff coming up here, as always, at Mysterious Chicago. Thanks a lot for joining me. With that, we will put the Benny Goodman back on and just hang out the way that we always do. Thanks a lot. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago, telling you all to stay safe and stay strong. And, of course, if you can, stay spooky, everybody. Very good week to be on the Patreon. Here's Benny. Yes, the Chicago Auto Show has been around since 1901 and showing the original, actually real Batmobile since the very first year. Tracy, that's awesome. I used to have more people on my tours who remembered the 33 Fair. I used to talk to people pretty regularly. They all remember their father getting in trouble for seeing Sally Rand, and they all remember puking on the Midway. A lot of puking on the Midway. I don't know if any of them are still around and ambulatory now. Marie, glad we could be here for you. I've only been to one auto show that I recall. I went to the World of Wheels in like 89 or 90 with my dad. RoboCop was there. Cats, what are you up to? I just heard a cat running, didn't I? I don't know which one it was. Was that Priya? That would mean we had all three cats make a brief appearance so far. Thank you, Sue. Thanks, everybody, for coming around. RoboCop was there, and not one but two Batmobiles. Both the Adam West and the Michael Keaton. Rita, I am drinking some Crown Royal tonight. Paula, Priya is a calico.
And that would put rhythm in the feet of a wooden Indian. That was the
Good night, Heather.
Benny Goodman's own arrangement. Now, The popular tune, Thanks for
Comment section took a lot of attention. I only glance over it occasionally. It seemed like everybody was having a good time, though. Again, I will say, I spent today, I'm trying to get ahead of myself on the Patreon posts with my work trips coming up. Gonna be a good couple of months on Patreon, I can tell you that. Thank you, Jane. Good night, Frank. Bob, you know, I had a dream that I got another cat the other day, and I woke up thinking I had one, but now 2 is really the correct number of cats here. We inherited Lenora's cat, Lily, and she's great too. Octavio, should I not read the comments? I never go back and look at the comments almost. Bill Savage is posting stuff about Dick Tracy selling the urban myth of bootlegger tunnels. If you're new here, there is a page on Facebook, Mysterious Chicago Regulars and Miles Fan Club. You saw Miles earlier today. Why don't I mix Crown Royal with Royal Crown? It's kind of a variation on Scotch and soda, I guess, or whiskey and Coke. Talking about welcoming pineapples? If I see like a devil face right when we're talking about welcoming pineapples. Comment section had a lot of produce than my grocery shopping this morning. Well, probably so, yeah. Vegetables. Nobody's trucking. It always starts with a Playboy building. Playboy's not really the kind of magazine that would show pictures of welcoming pineapples. I'm trying to think, magazines. I mean, I know which websites you should go to, of course, and which theme nights you should go to for such things, but which various groups around the city probably do stuff like that. The Syrians were up to trouble with their pineapple talk tonight. Okay.
Benny Goodman presents On the Alamo.
Have you ever read 1960s Playboy? It's very tame. It's 1950s Playboy especially is like literary fiction, jazz reviews, tips on how to buy a tape recorder for under $300. and like 2 pages of PG-13 pictures. Very, very classy, sophisticated stuff. With fiction by Gerald Kirsch. And of course the Shel Silverstein stuff. You would not have found stuff about welcoming pineapples in old Playboy. Even now, if somebody tells you they read Playboy for the articles, they're probably telling the truth. You could get much more hardcore stuff than that. They didn't get into the kink involving pineapples much. You know, there's great all kinds of fiction in there. They paid so much more. Like even like into the 90s, they paid way more for fiction than anybody else did. See if you can like download some 1950s or 60s stuff. I've got a lot of it on PDF. It's all very classy. Jazz reviews, theater reviews, where to go out to eat when you're in Chicago or New York.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and we stay right in the urban room of the Congress Hotel in Chicago and dance some more to Benny Goodman and his orchestra and hear Helen Ward sing Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Pineapple on pizza, I'm for it. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. What you doing with that pineapple, though? You say you're gonna stick it where it's not supposed to go there. Wiseman wings it. Even Mr. Crosby sings it. Okay, last week about this time, 3 really good albums came out. Nice's Shake Me Where I'm Foolish album. Terrific, I've been playing it all week. The Dinner Parties album finally came out, The Last Dinner Party. And the Paranoid Styles new album came out too. But I have spent my week listening to the records I picked up in New York, such as this great Riverside Press copy of Brilliant Corners. And I was not really hip to Grant Green before, but this album is fantastic. I just play it over and over while I work on the Johann Hawk book. And I had to wander high and low. You shouldn't have to wander high and low to get a copy of Charlie Parker with strings. They should sell this everywhere.
And we'll let the title speak for itself. Benny Goodman presenting Madhouse.
Yeah, 3 good albums that have kept me occupied all week. Even with a new Green Day that I'm still digesting. It's a good year for new albums, but Nice's Shake Me Where I'm Foolish has been my favorite so far. If Werewolf is not my top song of the year at the end of the year on Spotify, I will be surprised. I'm still not sure where you guys were going with this welcoming pineapple stuff. Welcome along, everybody. Glad to have you all here. Of course, we're just in the post-show hang now. 2 hours till the new albums come out. Or the new release playlist pops up anyway. Gonna be a good year. Still new Bleachers coming out. Good chance of a new Dylan album this year, I think. Well, Bob Dylan has apparently learned how to post Instagram stories. Yesterday he posted a picture of Doc Boggs, the banjo player, saying, "You'd be 126 today, Doc. We only met once, but it feels like yesterday." Did a similar thing for Hal Blaine. So either Bob Dylan is posting Instagram stories, or he told someone to start posting pictures of long-dead musicians with cute little personal birthday messages, which would be just a deeply weird enough thing to do that I wouldn't put it past him. In fact, now I gotta check and see if there's a new one up. Wait, really? Oh, okay, no. A friend of mine posted up, here's his tribute to Doc Boggs. My friend Laura just posted this fake one. Feel cute, might delete later. And I wasn't sure I was even following him myself, so I figure if anybody's posting anything, it's just going to be some intern. But now he appears to be posting for himself. So, okay. But having some intern post fake birthday messages to Hal Blaine and Doc Boggs would be just weird enough for him to do it for real. Yeah, Karen, Timothy Chalamet is about to film a Bob Dylan movie. And I really appreciate how much effort he's putting into it. He went and toured Dylan's old house in Duluth like I did last year, and is out in Hibbing, went to the auditorium like I did last year. He was a couple rows behind me at a show in Brooklyn. And he was rocking out too. So I am confident that if the movie's not very good, it won't be Timothy Chalamet's fault. And also, you can see him in the We Are the World documentary that is currently on Netflix, looking deeply uncomfortable. But sticking it out anyway, unlike Waylon Jennings.
We have been presenting the music of Benny Goodman and his orchestra from the Joseph Urban Room of the Congress Hotel on Michigan Avenue.
Well, all right, everybody, that is wrapping on up.
National Broadcasting Company.
So, thank you very much for joining me. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours, telling all of you to stay safe and stay strong, and of course, if you can, stay spooky, at least until morning, when it's Find a Grave Friday. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks to everybody who is, anybody who might have joined the Patreon. Thanks to anybody who has contributed here to help us get through the winter, the long, long winter of our discontent here in Chicago. Even though it's just raining, not snowing, even though it's February. Well, all right. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you all tomorrow morning for Find a Grave Friday. Stay safe and stay strong and stay spooky.